There was a time when she was the angel the whole world looked up to. Golden hair, icy blue eyes like a northern sea in winter, and a figure that made every runway fall silent. Karen Mulder, the Dutch supermodel, was once the ultimate embodiment of beauty in the 1992nd, but then she vanished, without a farewell, without an explanation. In 2001, Karen appeared on French television. Not in a fashion campaign, but in an interview that left viewers stunned. She claimed she had been raped by a fashion mogul, that the Parisian elite had drugged her, that she was injected with medication to keep her silent. Just hours after the program was recorded, Karen was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. She had once walked for Victoria's Secret, had been a muse for Versace, Dior, Chanel, and yet now she was labeled insane, delusional, and most tragically, forgotten. The woman who once had it all, power, beauty, wealth, now lived in isolation. No social media, no appearances, no one really knew where she was. What truly happened? Who pushed her out of the spotlight? And why did a supermodel like Karen Mulder become a symbol of silence? Karen Mulder was born in 1970 Vlaardingen, a small port town in the Netherlands, a place where the sun rarely shines bright and dreams often get swept away by the sea breeze. Her family belonged to the working class. Her father was an engineer, her mother a primary school teacher. They weren't strict, but they didn't encourage chasing unrealistic dreams either. In their world, fashion was frivolous, something distant, something not meant for tall, shy Dutch girls. From a young age, Karen was different. She towered over her classmates, skinny, quiet, and always a little detached. Kids at school used to call her the sad giraffe, but she never reacted. Karen kept to herself, spending hours drawing, journaling, and imagining another world, one where beauty wasn't mocked, but listened to. The Mulders were Protestant, not overly devout, but still bound to traditional values. At dinner and small remarks, the rules of modesty echoed. "A woman must always be humble," her mother would say. Karen listened quietly, but inside she was restless. There was something inside her, a pulse, a storm, yearning to break free, even if she didn't quite know what it was yet. In her teenage years, Karen began to change. Her height was striking, her eyes deep, her nose sharp, her face sculpted like a statue. She became the center of attention wherever she went. But what people remembered most wasn't her appearance, but her gaze, distant, unfocused, as if she lived in another realm altogether. At 15, she participated in a small amateur photo shoot. The photographer that day said, "She doesn't smile, but I can't stop looking at her eyes." And that was how it all began. Not because she was beautiful, but because she seemed to be hiding something behind those eyes. Her parents didn't approve. They wanted her to go to college, get a stable job, marry, and live quietly like most women. But Karen couldn't. There was something smoldering in her, a quiet storm, pushing her away from Vlaardingen and toward a place where beauty was power. At 17, she submitted her application to the Elite Model Look Contest, a decision that nearly caused a rift in her family. But she won. And just weeks later, she boarded a plane to Paris, alone, no friends, no family, carrying only a suitcase and an instinct to survive. Karen Mulder didn't enter the fashion world like Cinderella. She entered it like an exile, carrying loneliness, silence, and a vague hope that maybe she was born to be seen. Paris, 1987. The city of lights, of fashion, of dreams. But for a 17-year-old Dutch girl who didn't speak French and had no one waiting for her, Paris was a maze, strange and cold. Karen Mulder stepped off the plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport with a small suitcase, a few outfits, and eyes that always looked far beyond, as if the place she truly belonged to wasn't found on any map. Winning the Elite Model Look Contest secured her a contract with Elite Paris, one of Europe's most powerful modeling agencies at the time. But her beginning was far from a fairy tale. Her first castings were a string of rejections. She was dismissed for being too cold, lacking expression, not yet runway material. Some photographers bluntly said she had nothing special. What they didn't see was that Karen wasn't emotionless. She simply couldn't force a fake smile. She didn't know how to please people with empty charm. In Paris, a place where every model tried to become what the world expected, Karen held on to her quiet, mysterious self. And that silence slowly became her weapon. Her first breakthrough shoot came unexpectedly. A young French photographer named Laurent, who disliked commercial faces, chose Karen for an experimental black and white series. "She doesn't pose," he said. "She just exists in front of the lens." The series caught the eye of a Vogue Paris editor, and within a month, Karen Mulder began appearing on call sheets for major fashion houses. But the price of opportunity always comes with a cost. In Paris, the glamorous world of fashion had a darker undercurrent, full of power, manipulation, and unspoken rules. By 18, Karen had already experienced the stares of casting directors, the after-parties with flowing champagne and pills served like hors d'oeuvre. The light touches meant to assess her body but always carried something more. Elite Models, her agency, was led by Gérald Marie, a powerful man, feared and respected across the industry. Years later, Karen would mention his name through tears, accusing him of rape, of control, of silencing her with fear. But at the time, she said nothing. No one did. Because if you spoke out, you disappeared. Her family in the Netherlands didn't understand, nor did they want to. Her mother sent letters urging her to come home, to pursue university, to walk away from a dangerous, seductive world. But Karen kept going, not because she loved the spotlight, but because she couldn't return. Once you've known what it's like to be seen, truly seen, it's impossible to go back to being invisible. Karen Mulder didn't become a model because someone discovered her at a shopping mall or because of some divine beauty. She entered fashion as someone seeking a place to exist. Every step she later took on a runway, every icy stare into a camera lens, it was the outcome of a quiet war to protect the part of herself she refused to let vanish. Paris, 1991. The music swells. Spotlights slash through the darkness onto the catwalk like silver knives. And then she appears, Karen Mulder, gliding as if her feet never touched the ground, her gaze sharp as glass, her figure like it stepped out of a neoclassical sculpture. No one blinked. In that moment, the entire fashion world held its breath. It was the Chanel Haute Couture show, where Karl Lagerfeld personally chose her to open. In a silver white gown, her hair pulled tightly back, her makeup sharp and sculptural, in Karen was no longer the quiet girl from Vlardingen. She was an icon, the icy muse of French fashion. From that moment on, she wasn't just a model, she was a phenomenon. From 1991 to 1997, Karen Mulder was everywhere. She fronted major campaigns for Dior, Valentino, Versace, Guess, L'Oréal, Yves Saint Laurent. In a single year, she graced over 100 international magazine covers: French Vogue, American Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, Marie Claire. Her name became synonymous with elegance and status. But what truly set her apart wasn't just her beauty, it was her distance. On the runway, she didn't try to seduce. She didn't smile. She stood there, so still, so cold, so ethereal, that people felt both awe and unease. One stylist once said, "Karen doesn't need to say anything. She just stands there, and the room goes silent." In 1996, she was named one of the Magnificent Seven, the group of supermodels who ruled the world, alongside Claudia Schiffer, Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Cindy Crawford, Helena Christensen, and Christy Turlington. During a shoot for Vogue, legendary photographer Peter Lindbergh said, "Karen doesn't belong to this era. She belongs to a dream." And yet, even as the world worshipped her, cracks began to form. Backstage, Karen often sat alone. No laughter, no conversation. Some thought she was arrogant. The truth, she always felt like an outsider, even in the world she was conquering. In a rare interview, she once admitted, "When I smile on the cover of a magazine, it's because I'm supposed to. But inside, I feel empty." Her growing detachment from her own image, from the way strangers consumed her body and face, began to eat away at her. Each photo shoot no longer felt like art, but like exposure. Karen was also one of the early faces of Victoria's Secret, back when it was still high-end, not yet industrialized. Even in lingerie, she maintained a regal quality. She wasn't sexy like Naomi, nor approachable like Cindy. She was the ice goddess, a title the British press reserved only for her. But, like a cruel twist of fate, the very stillness and aloofness that lifted her to the top also began to push her aside. As the industry grew younger, hungrier, noisier, Karen seemed less interested in keeping up. And when you don't run, the spotlight quickly moves on. Yet before it all fell apart, she left behind a legacy, the image of a beauty untouchable, a cold shooting star, brilliant, brief, and gone too soon. She was a silent warning that perfection comes at a price. There's one thing the fashion industry never tolerates easily: a model who says no. And Karen Mulder said no many times, sometimes with words, but more often with silence as cold as stone. While other models chased lucrative campaigns with risque imagery, Karen declined many well-paid offers simply because they made her feel dirty. She once said, "There were shoots where I felt like I was being sliced up, piece by piece, in front of the camera." For Karen, photography was never just a job. It was exposure, and she would not give herself to anything that felt like violation. Once, at a casting for a luxury lingerie brand, the creative director asked her to wear a nearly transparent outfit and perform movements simulating female empowerment. Karen walked out without saying a word and never returned. She was immediately dropped from the campaign, but she had no regrets. The press labeled her difficult, unusually reserved, mentally unstable. In an industry where obedience is part of the contract, Karen's silence was seen as rebellion. She refused private parties with powerful men, refused one-on-one meetings with top investors, refused to be the face of brands she didn't believe in. What made Karen truly different was that she recognized the fine line between seduction and exploitation, and every time she sensed it being crossed, she chose to walk away. She was willing to lose opportunities to preserve something deeper: her dignity. She was also one of the few models at the time to criticize fashion's toxic obsession with extreme thinness. In a 1998 interview, when asked about her fitness routine, Karen coldly replied, "Don't eat. Or eat and throw up. That's what they teach you backstage, but no one ever says it out loud." That single quote got her unofficially blacklisted in the US for months. But Karen feared silence more than backlash. Friends said she couldn't stand watching one 8-year-old girl's trembling from hunger backstage while still being told to smile on cue. Once, she gave her smoked salmon sandwich to a younger model and was scolded by the stylist for ruining the silhouette. Karen simply replied, "We're making fashion, not mummies." Yet her resistance was never loud. She didn't go on television to name names. She didn't publish a memoir. Karen fought quietly, by disappearing, by refusing, by standing still. And in doing so, she became more dangerous than any whistleblower, because silence, true silence, is the sharpest accusation. One of her rare and haunting quotes came in an interview with French television. "I used to be a doll, but there comes a time when you have to stop letting people play with you." And that was when she began fading from the spotlight, from the photos, the runways, the magazines. Karen Mulder didn't defy the system by screaming. She did it by not complying. And in an industry built on absolute submission, that made her not just different, but expendable. June 2001. The French television show Tout le monde en parle aired an interview that shook the fashion industry to its core. On national television, Karen Mulder, once the very embodiment of elegance and haute couture, sat upright, barefaced, her voice trembling, but her eyes unwavering, and told a story no one dared to believe. She spoke of rape, not once, but many times, by powerful men within the fashion world. She named names: Gerald Marie, the head of elite model management, the man who once held the futures of hundreds of young models in his hands. She spoke of a world where 6-year-old girls were lured into private parties, drugged, and told they should be grateful for being chosen. She spoke of 5-star hotels, locked doors, and the suffocating silence that hung over it all like a law. Just hours after the recording, the program was pulled from air. Karen was taken to a psychiatric hospital at the request of her family. The diagnosis: severe depression, paranoid delusions. The media labeled her mentally unstable, out of control, delusional. No investigation followed, no charges. Her testimony was neatly filed away under a single label: insanity. In less than 24 hours, Karen Mulder went from brave whistleblower to a madwoman in the eyes of the public. For the years that followed, she vanished. No fashion shows, no campaigns, no interviews, no social media. Karen refused every offer to return, even from the very brands that once worshipped her. Some in the industry whispered she had died, or at least that she had killed her own career. In 2007, she made a brief appearance at a small fashion event in France. She stood on stage, no catwalk, no flashes, just a soft smile and a bow. Her face no longer held that icy distance. It now carried the weight of peace and something like sorrow, and then she disappeared again. In 2009, Karen was briefly detained after allegedly threatening a plastic surgeon over the phone. The case was dropped quickly, but the tabloids jumped at the opportunity to resurface her old image, the unstable supermodel. What could have been a quiet return was once again reduced to scandal. Some later reports suggested she now lived in southern France, raising her daughter. Friends confirmed, she's still beautiful, but she doesn't want to be seen. She's tired of being remembered for things people don't want to talk about. There was no farewell letter, no dramatic tell-all, no courtroom showdown. Karen vanished in the most complete way possible, into silence. She left behind the lights, the runways, the carefully choreographed fame, and with them, a set of questions no one dared answer. Was she telling the truth? Or was it madness? In a world addicted to triumphant comebacks, Karen represents a different kind of disappearance. The kind born from exhaustion, from too many battles fought without being believed. Even when the truth was always in her voice, in her trembling hands, in those cold, distant eyes. Today, when people talk about 90-second supermodels, they usually remember the ones who still shine: Naomi, Claudia, Cindy. And Karen Mulder? She's the elegant ghost who drifts through memory, breathtakingly beautiful, and then gone without a trace. She never wrote a memoir, never appeared on nostalgic talk shows, never recounted her journey through a polished lens. That's why Karen Mulder was never rehabilitated. She remains a quiet fracture in the polished walls of fashion history. She stands for the pain left untreated, for voices dismissed as unstable, for accusations buried beneath clinical diagnoses. And yet, that silence became her legacy. Not the ad campaigns, not the runway shows, but a quiet question that lingers. If Karen Mulder began her career today, in a world finally learning to hear pain, would we believe her? Or maybe she never truly disappeared. Maybe we were the ones who stopped looking.